ਸਾਕਾ ਨਨਕਾਣਾ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਦੀ 100ਵੀਂ ਬਰਸੀ ਉੱਤੇ ਅੰਤਰਰਾਸ਼ਟਰੀ ਪੱਧਰ ਦੀ ਜ਼ੂਮ ਮੀਟਿੰਗ ਦਾ ਆਯੋਜਨ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ। ਇਸ ਦੌਰਾਨ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਸਾਕਾ ਨਨਕਾਣਾ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਦੀ ਸ਼ਹੀਦੀ ਬਾਰੇ ਜ਼ਿਕਰ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ, ਉੱਥੇ ਧਾਰਮਿਕ ਆਜ਼ਾਦੀ ਬਾਰੇ ਵੀ ਖੁੱਲ੍ਹ ਕੇ ਵਿਚਾਰ ਵਟਾਂਦਰਾ ਹੋਇਆ। ਅਮਰੀਕਨ ਸਿੱਖ ਕਾਂਗਰੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਕਾਕਸ ਦੇ ਕੋ-ਚੇਅਰਪਰਸਨ ਕਾਂਗਰਸਮੈਨ ਜੌਨ ਗੈਰਾਮੰਡੀ ਅਤੇ ਕਾਂਗਰਸਮੈਨ ਡੇਵਿਡ ਵਾਲਾਡਾਓ ਤੋਂ ਇਲਾਵਾ ਯੂਐਨ ਗਲੋਬਲ ਸਟੀਅਰਿੰਗ ਕਮੇਟੀ ਦੇ ਮੈਂਬਰ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਇਖਤਿਆਰ ਚੀਮਾ, USCIRAF ਦੀ ਕਮਿਸ਼ਨਰ ਨਦੀਨ ਮਿੰਜ਼ਾ, ਸਾਬਕਾ ਕਾਂਗਰਸਮੈਨ ਪੈਟ ਮਿਹਾਨ, ਅਮਰੀਕਨ ਸਿੱਖ ਕਾਕਸ ਦੇ ਐਗਜ਼ੈਕਟਿਵ ਡਾਇਰੈਕਟਰ ਹਰਪ੍ਰੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਸੰਧੂ, ਇਮੀਗ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਡਿਫੈਂਸ ਅਟਾਰਨੀ ਜਸਪ੍ਰੀਤ ਕੌਰ ਅਤੇ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਕਸ਼ਮੀਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਨੇ ਇਸ ਜ਼ੂਮ ਮੀਟਿੰਗ ਦੌਰਾਨ ਆਪੋ ਆਪਣੇ ਵਿਚਾਰ ਪੇਸ਼ ਕੀਤੇ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਆਗੂਆਂ ਦਾ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਅੱਜ ਸਮੇਂ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਾਰੇ ਇਕੱਠੇ ਹੋ ਕੇ ਧਾਰਮਿਕ ਆਜ਼ਾਦੀ ਦੀ ਆਵਾਜ਼ ਨੂੰ ਬੁਲੰਦ ਕਰੀਏ ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਸਿੱਖ ਕੌਮ ਦੀ ਆਜ਼ਾਦੀ ਬਹਾਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਜਾ ਸਕੇ। ਅਮਰੀਕਨ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ ਪ੍ਰਬੰਧਕ ਕਮੇਟੀ ਦੇ ਕੋਆਰਡੀਨੇਟਰ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਪ੍ਰਿਤਪਾਲ ਸਿੰਘ ਅਤੇ ਪ੍ਰਧਾਨ ਜਸਵੰਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਹੋਠੀ ਨੇ ਇਸ ਜ਼ੂਮ ਮੀਟਿੰਗ ਦੀ ਕਾਮਯਾਬੀ ਉੱਤੇ ਤਸੱਲੀ ਦਾ ਇਜ਼ਹਾਰ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ ਅਤੇ ਉਮੀਦ ਜ਼ਾਹਰ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਆਉਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਸਮੇਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਇਸ ਮੁੱਦੇ ਨੂੰ ਹੋਰ ਅੱਗੇ ਲਿਜਾਇਆ ਜਾਵੇਗਾ।
Voices for the Sikh diaspora all across the United States and Canada and really across the world.
Yes, and let me tell you, there are a few of our colleagues who are joining us from Australia. It's 3 o'clock in the morning in Australia and somewhere 2 o'clock. And and
that's too early for me.
Right now on the Facebook across the world.
We are live on Facebook now. You can start. You guys can start.
Harpreet, I think you should start now. Can you record it as well, please?
Yes.
Start the recording.
Already started.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the American Sikh Caucus Committee and its board members, we welcome you all to this Zoom meeting on the centennial commemoration of Nankana Sahib Saka. As Dr. Chima mentioned, my name is Harpreet Sandhu, and I'm the co-executive director of the American Sikh Caucus Committee. Before we discuss the meeting, a brief history of our organization and our close relationship with the American Sikh Congressional Caucus. As you have mentioned before, our both co-chairs, Congressman John Garamendi and also Congressman David Valadao, are here, and our former co-chair, Congressman Patrick Meehan, is also live with us. Caucus seeks to address issues of hate crime, school bullying, serving in the military with the articles of faith of the Sikh religion to represent the Sikh diaspora. Over the years, they've taken a stand on desecration of the Sikh holy scriptures, the Guru Granth Sahib, violence on religious minorities, safety of Sikhs in Afghanistan, the Sikh Marriage Act in Pakistan and India, assistance to individuals who are Sikhs that may seek assistance from the State Department, and hosts of other issues. And today we are holding a briefing on the Nankana Sahib massacre. And as we will have panelists who will be addressing in context the repression against freedom of religion and the right to protest, it is an honor to have them all here today, who will be speaking shortly as Congressman Meehan will introduce them. To the addressing the issue of the Nankana Sahib.
We are okay.
Harpreet, thank you so much for your kind introduction and this important 100-year recognition of Nankana, February 20th, 1921, and the Holy Gurdwara at Nankana Sahib, and certainly the birthplace.
I apologize.
Harpreet, don't share screen yet.
Yeah, I was about to finish up, Congressman. Let me just finish up.
Okay.
We'll be done. So that by the 20th century, a number of Sikh Gurdwaras under the British India were controlled by the clergymen who were appointed by the government. A non-violent movement began in 1920s, and under which members of the Sikh community went in droves as peaceful protest against the oppression of the Gurdwaras and the individuals. And as such, members went from many different places. And as you can see on the pictures in the following, you will see as people gathered throughout the places and different organizations. These are pictures from the Jathas, the movement people who went to the Gurdwaras to free them, to liberate them. And they were organized by the hundreds of thousands of individuals. And individuals such as men and women, as you can see here, who participated in this movement. The Nankana Sahib was, this episode was very much highlighted by press. As you can see, was covered by the Illustrated London News Weekly as well. Unfortunately, these jathas were mainly led by many different peoples, specifically by Lakshman Singh on the morning of February 20th, arrived at Nankana Sahib, and they were met with hoodlums who had been gathered by the priests, and more than over 130 people, more than that, were killed. And within the massacre, one person was survived, which is said to be by Lakshman Singh, who was fastened to a tree and was also burnt alive. And as you can see the pictures, the movement continued with different major marches to freedom of the Gurdwaras, such as the Morcha for Jabia, the Key Morcha, the Guru Ka Bagh, Jaitoda Morcha. Hundreds and thousands of men and women were going to these places. Eventually, 1947 happened, and India became a country. Unfortunately, today, it's farmers of India and those of Punjab whose livelihood is in jeopardy, are again facing the same kind of persecution. And we are so thankful. We are joined here with both congressmen. The chairs have written strongly to both the ambassador from India to the United States, as well as members of Congress who have written to the State Department. So it is, but as the caucus, as you had mentioned earlier, has worked on many different issues. For instance, when we worked with the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission and bring his issues of minority rights, minority religions, and was attended by, as you see before COVID, by many, many people. And our panelists, as we have Nadine, who's the member of the USERF, their members at that time also attended our meetings. And as well as we're proud to have the caucus also work on genocide. As you can see, Adama Dieng, who was the Undersecretary of the United States and worked under the human rights and as well as the genocide in Rwanda, was the main speaker there as well and was presented. So all in all, the caucus has been working on these issues for the Sikh caucus, and today we're proud to also once again work on this issue. We're so honored, as mentioned before, our co-chairs have taken the lead on all the issues of the Sikh concerns. So we're thankful, and I will turn back to Congressman Meehan, who was also our former chair, and thank you for all of you who are attending, especially our speakers. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Harpreet, and for that important introduction. Let me begin the introductions today of our terrific panel, and it begins with our two friends from the House of Representatives who have been leaders in representing the issues of the American and international Sikh community. Let me begin first with Congressman John Garamendi from California's 3rd Congressional District. Congressman Garamendi is not only a senior member of the House Armed Services Committee, but he is among the original founding members of the American Sikh Caucus, and now continues as its co-chair for a number of Congresses, and has been a tremendous advocate on behalf of the community. So without further ado, let me introduce Congressman Garamendi for his welcoming remarks.
Well, thank you very much. It's a great privilege to be with all of you and to be back with my co-chair, David Valadao, who took a short hiatus and is now back with us. We look forward to addressing the many, many issues, not only of the Sikh community, but of the larger immigrant community here in the United States. I think we understand more completely how important it is that we promote and assure the civil liberties of all people. We usually thought that this was not an issue for America. We thought this was an issue for other places around the world. And certainly when we consider India and Pakistan, the minority communities in those countries, we notice and observe the very significant issues of democracy and human rights. The ongoing protest of the farmers in India is noted, not only here in our districts, Mr. Valadeo's as well as my own district, but really throughout the United States and around the world. The Sikh community, as broadly spread around the world as it is rallying the attention of the world to the legitimate claims of the farmers in India. And so too, here in the United States, we put forth our own resolutions and letters to the Indian government asking that they pay attention to the issues that the farmers are presenting. Here within the United States, the most recent mob that attacked the United States Capitol brings to us in vivid and horrible attention the potential for violence. It is therefore extremely important here in the United States and wherever it is in the world that protests be peaceful and that we present our issues to the government in a way that is factual, in a way that is clear and compelling, and to avoid violence. The violence does no good for any of us. We also know that here in the United States that this white nationalism is a problem for many, many different ethnic groups. We've seen it in the Sikh community. In our own area of Sacramento, two elderly gentlemen were shot down on the street, probably only because they were different. They were Sikhs. They were wearing turbans. And someone, as yet unknown, used their hatred to terminate the lives of these two gentlemen. And that's not the only incident that we have seen in California, in our area. And so we must be always aware, and we must always seek harmony, put aside bigotry and hatred, and recognize that we are a community of humans spread throughout the world, each with unique attributes and unique talents. And so today, as we remember the massacre, as we remember the protests that occurred before and after, we must dedicate ourselves to nonviolent protest, to nonviolently bringing to the authorities our concerns and our solutions. And so with that, I thank you for the opportunity to be with you today and look forward to hearing from Mr. Valadeo, as well as from whomever else may be on. I will say that I've got about another 15 minutes and then other Zooms must commence. So Harpreet, thank you. Dr. Chima, thank you so very much for the invitation.
Thank you so much, Congressman Garamendi. And I think that you can hear in the depth of his remarks, not only his passion for leadership of the caucus and their interests, but his deep understanding of the important issue of religious freedom. And we're grateful for your leadership and service. We are also grateful for the leadership and service of his colleague in the House, also from California, the co-chair of the Congressional American Sikh Caucus from California's 21st Congressional District, and also a farmer himself, who I think has a unique appreciation for what it means to tend the soil, and also a co-founding member of the American Sikh Caucus, and therefore not only somebody who deeply understands the issues, but has been out in front representing the cause in the United States Congress. So I turn it over to Congressman Valadeo for your opening comments.
Thank you, Pat. It's great to see you. It's been a while, and it's nice to see everyone on the call, especially my co-chair, John Garamendi. It's going to be nice when we could actually get to the point where we can see each other face to face like the old days. It seems like so long ago. Thank you all for the opportunity to be here today. This is obviously something that's very important to me, and it's very important to the community I have the honor of representing. California's 21st Congressional District is home to a vibrant and proud Sikh community, which is why I rejoined the American Sikh Caucus as co-chair, to make sure I'm doing everything I can to represent the needs of my Sikh neighbors. This includes not only fighting to end the current violence and harassment in the American Sikh community, but also acknowledging the immense religious persecution that they have faced in the past and in the present, and recognizing the 100-year anniversary of the Nankana massacre, a tragic loss of innocent life. It is important to find ways to continually move the ball forward to ensure that something like this never happens again. This is exactly why I've been so outspoken in support of the Punjabi farmers who are fighting for their livelihood as we speak. I find it deeply upsetting that the Indian government is violating their right to express their concerns. The right to peacefully protest is a bedrock principle to our democratic government. And that's why I urge the Indian government to respect and recognize that I am ready and willing to work with my colleagues in Congress to fight for these very basic rights. I mean, we've struggled so much, and like Pat mentioned, my family farms. It's something that I enjoy, and the Sikh community in my area, many of them are farmers. Many of them have other businesses as well. I see some on here that engineering, truckers, and other types of industries that they play a vital role in. They add so much to our community. We're honored to have them here as part of our community. But just like my own parents, who are immigrants themselves, we're always watching what's going on back at home. And the U.S. isn't perfect, but we also have an opportunity to hold each other to a higher standard, to make sure that people have the opportunity to have their voices heard, to not be persecuted. And in my own district, over the last few years, we've had people who were attacked and even murdered for their beliefs or what they look like. And that's something that has to stop. And I think being a part of this caucus really helps us shed some light on some of these unjust activities. And so I'm thrilled to be part of the group. I'm glad to serve alongside of my friend John Garamendi, and I'm looking forward to hearing some more dialogue as we go forward. But as John mentioned earlier, I also have a hearing going on as we speak, so I'll be on for a little bit, but I have staff who will be on the call as well. So I appreciate the opportunity, and I'll turn it back to Pat. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman Valadao, and we all appreciate the many demands on your time, and therefore are all the more deeply appreciative of your participation in this today and your leadership in general. Let me open now to our distinguished keynote speaker, Commissioner of the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom, Nadine Maenza, who has distinguished herself as a voice for international religious freedom, speaking across the world, but more importantly, going boots on the ground and having actually visited important locations around the world on behalf of the Commission and on behalf of on efforts that she has worked as well as the chairman of the Hardwired Global, working to stop religious oppression around the world. We are just very, very grateful and deeply pleased to have Commissioner Maenza with us today. So, Commissioner, I turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, and thanks for the gracious introduction, and thanks to all of you for inviting me to join you today. As you heard, my name is Nadine Maenza, and I'm a commissioner at the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. I'm honored to be a part of this event to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the Nankana massacre. The Sikh community around the world has suffered and continues to suffer so much persecution. Yet throughout history and today, the Sikh community has established this incredible legacy of promoting religious freedom and justice. The essence of Sikhism is to defend and celebrate freedom of worship in the way of peace and community. As a youth serve commissioner, I've had the opportunity to meet with Sikhs from various countries and to hear how the community has been wrongly targeted for its faith. I've come to deeply appreciate your commitment and work on behalf of those who are oppressed, persecuted, marginalized, no matter what their faith or their background. I'm especially moved by how the Sikh community does not just teach forgiveness and reconciliation, but shows us what it looks like. It's not about rewarding someone with forgiveness, but a gift you give whether you deserve it or not. And also how to be merciful, especially against those who have wronged you. Regardless of our faith traditions, we can all learn from your faithful examples. And I've been both encouraged and inspired by the ways the Sikh community has tirelessly raised its voice for human rights on multiple fronts and in many contexts, and especially for all people to be able to worship according to their conscience, regardless of their faith. When talking to colleagues about the opportunity to participate in this event today, several have shared their own experiences of how the Sikh community has stood up for justice and against intolerance. The stories of Sikhs protecting and supporting the Muslim and other marginalized communities in India during mob violence has been especially encouraging, even as it has been disheartening to watch religious freedom conditions in that country continue to decline. I'd like to give you some background on the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, or we call it USCIRF, so you can better understand our role and mandate, with the hope that we can work more effectively together towards our common goal of ensuring religious freedom for all. I also will share some ways that USCIRF has reported on the persecution of Sikhs around the world. So USCIRF is a unique agency, so we're independent and bipartisan, and our mandate is to assess religious freedom conditions abroad using only international standards, not comparing them to the United States. And then we make recommendations to the President, the Secretary of State, and to Congress. USCIRF has 9 commissioners appointed by the President and congressional leadership of both political parties, and also a professional staff of about 20. USCIRF was created by the International Religious Freedom Act of 1998, commonly referred to as IRFA, at the same time as the State Department's Office of International Religious Freedom was created, with their ambassador at large position. We work closely together, as the ambassador is an ex officio member of the commission, but we are independent and make our own independent recommendations. USCIRF commissioners are private citizen volunteers. We come from different political parties, different faiths, different professional backgrounds, and different parts of the country. Yet we all agree, as you do, on the importance of freedom of religion or belief for everyone, everywhere. And we need to shine a light on the severe abuses that so many individuals of all faiths and of none suffer for exercising their right to believe or not to believe. Religious freedom abuses, whether caused directly by government actions or by their inaction, should not go unchallenged. Research has found that countries that uphold religious freedom have more vibrant and democratic political institutions, rising economic and social well-being, diminished tension and violence, and greater stability. Nations that trample on or fail to protect this basic right, including religious freedom, provide fertile ground for poverty and insecurity, war and terror, and violent radical movements and activities. USCIRF calls out religious freedom violations and makes policy recommendations to the US government through press releases, op-eds, reports throughout the year, and an annual report each spring. This report covers around 30 countries, those we recommend that the State Department designate as a country of particular concern, or a CPC, because their governments perpetrate or tolerate religious freedom violations that meet this threshold of systematic, egregious, and ongoing. For countries that meet 2 but not all 3 of those threshold requirements, we recommend that they be listed on the State Department's special watch list. We will be launching our USCIRF 2021 annual report at a virtual event on April 21st, and we ask and encourage you to attend. I will make sure to share the invitation and specific information as we get closer. This year's annual report will give a picture of where religious freedom is in peril and an idea of some of the things that can be done about it. The report will highlight countries where conditions are a serious concern, and it will include our recommendations on how to promote religious freedom abroad more effectively. As our report will detail, US law provides a wide range of tools to address severe religious freedom violations, including IRFA, the 2016 Frank R. Wolf International Religious Freedom Act, and the Global Magnitsky Human Rights Accountability Act. In over 20 years of our existence, USCIRF's recommendations have made a real impact on US policy, ensuring that the worst violators are called out for their egregious violations of religious freedom. And for those that the State Department designates as a CPC, the US government is required to take an action to encourage improvements. One of our recommendations to the US government is to discontinue giving waivers to most of the countries that have been designated as a CPC, eliminating any penalty for being one of the worst religious freedom violators in the world. Instead, the US government should take a unique presidential action or negotiate a binding agreement in order to demonstrate meaningful consequences and encourage positive change. 10 of USCIRF's recommendations for CPC designations for our 2020 annual report were just adopted by the State Department in December of 2020. They are Burma, China, Eritrea, Iran, Nigeria, North Korea, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Tajikistan, and Turkmenistan. The State Department did not designate 4 countries we had recommended: India, Russia, Syria, and Vietnam. Nevertheless, USCIRF's recommendations let those countries know that the US government is watching and is aware of the particular severe violations of religious freedom that are occurring. We have seen that this can be a strong motivator for countries to make changes and improve their religious freedom conditions. We also recommended 15 countries for the State Department's special watch list. We do collect information throughout the year on each of the CPC countries or the special watch list countries. And we also write on occasion about other countries that are not even included in those designations. Please feel free to reach out to us to share any information you think would assist us in our evaluation of the religious freedom conditions around the world. In addition to our annual report and accompanied policy recommendations, USCIRF issues publications throughout the year providing updates on developments in specific countries. We also issue reports and hold events on cross-cutting issues such as religious intolerance in education materials, and the enforcement of blasphemy laws, and hate speech and disinformation on social media. USCIRF serves as a resource to numerous congressional offices, providing information, expert testimony, and support in developing legislation or engaging in other activities based on our recommendations. We also hold hearings on Capitol Hill on a variety of different topics relevant to religious freedom. Recently adopted legislation based on USCIRF's recommendations and support include the Uyghur Human Rights Act and a resolution calling for the global repeal of blasphemy, heresy, and apostasy laws. In addition, we have a religious prisoners of conscience project to illustrate the impact of religious freedom abuses by advocating for specific individuals from a range of beliefs and in a range of countries in prison for exercising their religious freedom. We do not have any members of the Sikh community in our religious prisoners of conscience project, so we would welcome any recommendations you have for prisoners that we should include. We also maintain the freedom of religion or belief victims list that is available on our website. We would again welcome any individuals or prisoners we could add to this important database that Congress has instructed USCIRF to compile. I would also like to take a moment to share a few examples of USCIRF's recent reporting on the Sikh community around the world and just some of our key recommendations for these specific countries. You can see all of our recommendations from our past annual report online at uscirf.gov. So first, USCIRF is very concerned about the Sikh community in Afghanistan. The community experienced egregious human rights violations under Taliban rule, and very few who remain in the country can observe their faith publicly for fear of violent reprisals by terrorist groups or by the larger society within which they live. USCIRF has recommended Afghanistan to be included on the State Department's special watch list and urges the US government to ensure that protections for freedom of religion or belief are integrated into any future negotiations with the Taliban or the Afghan government. In India, we are troubled by the worsening religious freedom conditions. The Sikh community continues to face pressure from Hindu nationalists to reject Sikh religious practices, including dress and hair. We've also received reports of religious materials being confiscated. We remain concerned about these religious freedom violations and also current and ongoing issues in India that negatively impact the Sikh community. Although the farmers' protests are not explicitly about religious freedom, it is hard to talk about India without acknowledging these unprecedented protests and the troubling reports of Sikhs who have been arbitrarily arrested and beaten in jail. We will continue to watch these developments closely and the impact on the dignity and freedom of the Sikh community. USCIRF has made numerous recommendations to the US government regarding India, including the placement of targeted sanctions on Indian government agencies and officials responsible for several violations of religious freedom by freezing those individuals' assets and barring their entry to the United States. In Pakistan, which we have recommended as a CPC, egregious persecution of Sikhs by both the government and non-state actors has been a long-standing concern for USCIRF. We were glad to see a few positive developments in Pakistan in 2019, such as the opening of the Kartarpur corridor with India, allowing Sikh pilgrims to visit the Gurdwara Darbar Sahib in Pakistan's Punjab province, and Prime Minister Imran Khan laying the foundation stone of Pakistan's first Sikh university. USCIRF has recommended that the US enter into a binding agreement with the Pakistan government to encourage substantial steps and to address religious freedom violations with important benchmarks. We've also recommended targeted sanctions for individuals and government agencies in Pakistan that are responsible for these severe religious freedom violations. Elsewhere, while we have seen some positive developments for the Sikh community in Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates over the years, in Malaysia, we are disappointed that Sikh Gurdwaras are prevented from building domes because of their association with Islamic architecture. In closing, please know that USCIRF will continue to monitor and report on conditions for Sikhs in all of these countries and to raise our concerns with both the US government and the relevant foreign governments. We invite you to share any information about conditions regarding religious freedom, especially in the Sikh community. And thanks again for including me in this important commemoration and for your incredible work on behalf of international religious freedom. USCIRF is fortunate to have a partner like United Sikhs working alongside us to defend the right to freedom of religion or belief for all people. And as we each do our part to make the world a better place. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, for those very, very passionate remarks, and also for the way that you have embraced your role by becoming personally engaged in the issue of religious freedom through your, not only through your speaking out, but your visits to the communities and carrying the very important voice of America around the world. Thank you for your continuing service. And we look forward to working with you to continue to promote the issues of religious freedom. We have a continuing distinguished panel to follow off of the remarks of Commissioner Manza, and it begins with Dr. Iktitar Chima, a member of the United Nations Global Steering Committee and the director of the Institute for Leadership and Community Development in the United Kingdom. In 2017, the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom published his report titled Constitutional and Legal Challenges Faced by Minorities in India. He's testified in various congressional hearings and briefings, and he has studied philosophy at the University of Oxford and holds a PhD in international relations. Dr. Chima, we look forward to your remarks.
Thank you very much, John. Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us for this wonderful congressional briefing. In the past, the congressional briefings were in the houses, but I'm very grateful to both our co-chairs to be with us in this virtual congressional briefing this afternoon. As Harpreet has given you a very good background of the Nankana Sahib, as well as Nadine has very well elaborated what Sikh religion stands for. The beauty of the Sikh religion is it's one of the very modern faith of the world, and it believes in the coexistence. Where it believes in the coexistence, at the same time, it has a very strong sense of its own religious identity. And unfortunately, throughout the ages, throughout the centuries, the rulers, the autocratic governments, the imperialistic governments always try to snub that religious identity. And the Sikhs have in various centuries faced religious persecution as well as genocide, which the biggest, it starts from 1746 under the Hindu finance minister Lakhpat Rai, the first Sikh genocide. Then it goes to 1762 when an Afghan ruler attacked Punjab and committed the second Sikh genocide. And then ultimately when the Sikh empire was taken over by the British Empire, they did something even worse than the physical genocide. I was looking at the records, being a trained historian, that on 12th of August, 1857, Sir Robert reported to the East India Company that we need to look much deeper into the Sikh faith and the Sikh faith institution. And then they asked a certain Mr. Trump, that is not Donald J. Trump, that was Ernest Trump, whom the East India Company commissioned to write a report about the Sikhism. And in 1869, Mr. Trump published his Trump report, in which he mocked the Sikh faith and Sikh faith traditions, as well as he classified Sikhism as just a sect of Hinduism. That given birth to a great question of the Sikh identity under the British colonial rule. And in 1869, after this report, the British colonial masters, they try to interfere in the Sikh religion in such a way that they have given more strength to Arya Samajist movement in India, which was consistently mocking the Sikh faith. And in 1898, the question of the Sikh identity became legal when a Sikh philanthropist, Sardar Singh Jithia, died. And then he was classified as a Hindu, but he was a Sikh, and the matter ended up in the court. And British government consistently tried to curtail the Sikhs on identity, and at the same time the majority of that very subcontinent of India was trying to snub the Sikhs. And there was a movement with the so-called turban wearing Sikhs like Khem Singh Bedi, who said Sikhs are no different religion than Hinduism. And then there were people who put that very strong alternative counter narrative. Someone called Bhai Kahan Singh Nabha, who wrote a book, Hum Hindu Nahi, which meant we are not Hindus, we are Sikhs, and we have our own identity. And then all these Sikh shrines in India, they were interfered by the state authorities, and a lot of idols were kept in these gurdwaras. And the Sikhs' right to freely worship in their places of worship was curtailed, as well as the Sikh identity was attacked, and hence the reason this movement was started. If we look at the contemporary period of Saka Nankana Sahib and this massacre, we would know that in 1909, the British colonial masters given a piece of legislation which is called Indian Councils Act, and then in 1919, Monty Chelmsford reforms came as well. So through these pieces of legislation, the religious communities were getting more of representation in the legislative process, as well as in the Indian legislature under the British rule. But at that time, the majority of that country and the people who were from the majority faith community, they were trying to curtail the Sikh influence, as well as they were trying to capture all the Sikh places of worship. So their religious identity should not convert into their legislative and their constitutional fight, or their due representation shouldn't be given to the Sikhs. So this was not a simple matter of religious freedom. It was also related to the Sikhs' representation in the legislature under the British colonial masters. Hence this event, which was part of the big Sikh reform movement, which is called Singh Sabha movement, was a very much part of it. And let me tell my panelists today that there were 264 people and Sikh souls were lost in 1921 in February. And the youngest one was just 6-year-old. A lot of people would give that narrative, and a lot of you can search about this event. But I think it's very important when we're looking at the narrative of history, we need to compare the history with the contemporary world. So these people have given their life, these 264 souls lost, to save the Sikh identity. But unfortunately, as a few of our speakers have already pointed out, the question of Sikh identity is still a very crucial question in Indian subcontinent today. As you are aware, and I have mentioned in my report published by United States Commission on International Religious Freedom, even today, the Constitution of India, Section 25, subclause B, still does not give Sikhs their separate identity, rather classify them as a subcaste of Hindus. And the Sikhs have been struggling against this over the years. Commissioner Maniza would appreciate that it is a situation like the Qadianis in Pakistan have been given their separate identity as a minority. But in Indian constitution, it's different, where the Sikhs are struggling for them to be recognized as a religious community on their own, but that is not being granted. So those who has given life in 1921, that issue even continues today. The second thing we should understand that these people were the peaceful protesters, and these peaceful protesters were, they faced the brutality and atrocity crimes under the patronage of the British rule. But for the Sikhs, it's the same situation now. When we are 1 century down the line in 2021, we are seeing the similar patterns of state brutality. We have, Congressman John Garamendi was talking about the non-violence. We have seen absolutely in the farmer movements, no violence has been used by the protester, but they are facing the police brutality. The water cannons have been used, the people have been beaten up, the people have lost their lives. When we talk about the non-violence, we should also emphasize that the non-violence should be followed by the state, because often we forget that the state terrorism is the worst aggression any community can face. So in 1921, peaceful protesters faced the brutality, and now Sikhs, the protesters, majority of them are the Sikhs, they are facing the same brutality today. Now, when we're talking about the atrocity crimes, Sikhs have been facing the atrocity crimes throughout, which are most of which are not recognized at the level they should be recognized at. I've given you the examples from the medieval history, as well as the Sikh genocide in 1984 and 1984 to 1996. That has not been recognized as genocide, and hence the world needs to wake up to this and recognize as a genocide. American Sikh Caucus already organized, as Harpreet was telling you, exclusive briefing about the genocide, where United Nations Under Secretary General Adama Dieng has participated. Now, it's about seeking justice for people. 1921 was a century ago, but let's talk about the contemporary world. A similar incident happened on 4th of February 1986, which is about 35, 38 years ago. And the 4 Sikh youth who were peaceful protesters were martyred, which is called Saka Nakodar. Now the family of the victims are still seeking justice. And the Indian government has constituted a commission on this massacre of Saka Nankana Sahib, but the Indian government is not publicizing the report of the commission it constituted itself. It was a judicial commission headed by a retired Chief Justice, and Indian government is not publicizing that report because obviously that very report would pinpoint the state involvement in such crimes, such atrocity crimes. In the real sense, nothing has changed for the Sikhs in the subcontinent. Now, I just want to talk about, because I think I don't want to go over my time limit. I want to give legacy that these people who have given their life in 1921 and where they have given their life, what they have achieved. What they have achieved is a very strong sense of identity of the Sikhs and reinforce that. And for this very Sikh identity, the Sikh gurus, starting from the 5th Guru, the 9th Guru, the 10th Guru, and his sons, they have given their lives too. So they have walked on the path of their faith. And today the people who are offering their struggle, their peaceful struggle for their faith are on the same path. Now, if you go to Pakistan, I wish Nadine would be able to visit at some point because Pakistan is obviously a country of particular concern with some, but as Nadine was talking about Kartarpur corridor, which United Nations Secretary General has said it is a corridor of peace. Now, that corridor of peace is the legacy of these martyrs. If these martyrs in 1921 wouldn't had this great movement to liberate their gurdwaras and temple and the right of worship, today there would have been no Kartarpur corridor. And in Nankana Sahib, where this massacre happened, I think government of Pakistan have paid attention to it, and they have had a very nice commemorative, not one, a whole complex dedicated to these martyrs. Now, most importantly, the legacy of these martyrs and their identity is, as Article 25(2)(b) is not giving Sikhs their personal laws. We have been stressing on government of Pakistan that they should give Sikhs their personal laws in Pakistan. And I'm happy to reflect, I have just been told that on the commemoration, on this centennial commemoration, government of Pakistan going to implement Sikh personal laws first time in Pakistan. And the Sikh Marriage Act is being implemented in Pakistan, which will make Pakistan the first state to recognize the Sikh personal laws as well as the marriage. So these martyrs have given their lives for Sikh identity, and we should salute them on this day. And this journey of getting Sikh recognized and the atrocity crimes against the Sikhs should continue. I would request United States Commission on International Religious Freedom, as well as our congressmen, that we should seek justice for these people who have faced atrocities in the past and now. And let me remind you, all of you, that today where we are talking about Kartarpur corridor, where we are talking about Nankana Sahib, Commissioner Nadine, you should note that under this ultra-national BJP government, a lot of Sikh shrines in India are now are the target of the Hindutva groups, and a lot of Sikh heritage is at stake. I know you have very nicely and very keenly worked about Yazidi sites and the Christian sites in the Middle East. One of the very major site which is related to the Sikh founder, Guru Nanak, which is called Gurdwara Gyan Di Godri, and few other Sikh temples in India are at the risk to be demolished or completely wiped out, like Babri Mosque in India. So we should pay particular attention to all these religious freedom violations. Commemorating people's sacrifice is only relevant if we learn lessons from it and the world community take those themes forward. I thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Chima, for your very, very important remarks and your recognition of the legacy that we go from 1921 to today, but the significance of what goes on at Kaptur today at the birthplace of Guru Nanak, but it continues to be an important mission moving forward. At this point, I want to introduce Dr. Kashmir Singh, who's a professor of law who has taught at a number of different universities for the last 40 years in India. He's now retired from the Guru Nanak Dev University in Amritsar, where he had served as the dean and head of the Department of Laws. He's a life member of the Indian Law Institute in New Delhi, where he was also an executive member of that institute. We are very grateful to have Dr. Singh with us here today. And Doctor, I turn it over to you for your remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And hello.
Hi,
I welcome
Dr.
all the
Singh.
participating friends. I think I'm being heard. I welcome all the friends, and I further heard. Hello.
Can you speak loud?
Hello. I'm to talk about the Sikh identity during the later part of the 18th century and the earlier 19th century. So when this Nankana Sahib massacre has happened, so what was the type of the Sikh identity was there at that point of time? So I'll simply mention that Gurdwara being an institution intimately connected with the Sikh identity. So this Sikh Gurdwara at Nankana Sahib, it was quite informed.
There is a problem with the voice. Paji, क्या कोई नेड़े कर सकते तुसी? Mic.
Gurdwara at Nankana granted about 19,000 acres of highly fertile land by Maharaja Ranjit Singh, the Sikh ruler, who had given big grants to the richest shrines of other communities also. So then Nankana Sahib was having in the control of in the hands of the man who was named as Randhawa. So when Punjab was annexed to the British Empire in 1849,
Can we continue with the Jaspreet maybe and move on?
I think we should discontinue with Dr. Kashmir because he's from India and probably he has some issues with his signals. So Pat, if you can please invite the next.
Yes, yes, we can. And in the meantime, we will work to determine whether or not we can make a better connection with Dr. Singh. And I know the folks will work with that offline, and we'll invite him back if in fact we can. But we are grateful to also have with us Jaspreet Kaur, who is an advisor to Voices of Freedom. She's an immigration defense attorney at Gell & Gell, and we are grateful to have Jaspreet here for her comments. Jaspreet?
Thank you, Congressman. I'm honored to be here representing Sikh women. So I'm very, very proud, and I'm very happy to see all of you here. I would also like to thank everyone for giving me this opportunity. I'm honored to be here, to be honest. Given the current situation to the religious freedom, right to protest in India and everywhere else, today's discussion carries an extreme importance. I would also like to reflect on towards the history and also compare it to the contemporary as of today, like Dr. Chima here too. Guru Gobind Singh Ji, the 10th Guru of Sikhs, when created Khalsa in 1699 and gave last names of Singh and Kaur to men and women, Singh means lion and Kaur means princess. Having a common last name meant that everybody is equal, irrespective of their caste, color, social, and economic background. My last name, Kaur, to me reflects Sikh values of courage, equality, strength, social justice, and empathy. These qualities have been mine and a lot of other Sikh women's guiding principles, and we have continued to take inspirations from them and from these values. Guru Nanak Sahib Ji, the first Sikh Guru, laid the foundation of equal importance by creating to men and women in 15th century. He said, "So kyo manda akhiye jit jamme rajan," meaning, it is through women that order is maintained, then why call her inferior from all great ones are born? During his lifetime, Gurdwara, a house of worship, was introduced. It was a place where both men and women prayed together, were treated equally, had same rights. Women could be priests, they could pray, they could serve, sing hymns, and without any gender inequality. This concept at that time in 15th century was radical and unheard of by anybody at that time. In 1849, when British took over Punjab, control of Sikh Gurdwaras were handed over to Hindu Mahants. They started treating Gurdwaras as their personal property. Realizing the spirit and threat of the Sikhs uprising to seek freedom, British made Mahants more powerful and ensured that Sikhs didn't control or manage their own houses of worship or their own Gurdwaras. The Mahants practiced illicit activities, including disrespecting women, which was a violation of Sikh faith and belief. These actions deeply hurt Sikh sentiment and spirit and faith and conscience of Sikh population at the time, which led to the non-violent movement to free the Gurdwaras from these corrupt non-Sikh control and reintroduce Gurmat Maryada, which is a Sikh way of life, to such Sikh institutions. Jathas, or the organized groups of Sikh, march in the protest to raise their voices for common cause. Although British were warned that any person serving food or taking care or water to these jathas or marches will be punished, villagers and in large number women were the ones who gathered and served these jathas. One glaring example of such women participation in the morcha was Jatiya Morcha that happened in 1924 is of Balbir Kaur. Balbir Kaur was a 22-year-old young mother who participated in the morcha with her 2-year-old son. She joined the protest and was immediately asked by the leader of the group to return, given that she was carrying the child. She asserted her right of a Sikh woman and said that she's embracing her duty of equal representation, and she politely refused to turn back. Displaying her courage, strength, valor, she continued to march for several days with her child. When the march was nearing completion, it was evident that protesters would be killed, as British forces were ready to attack and shoot them. Balbir Kaur was determined to continue. She did not care for her or her son's life. She was ready to die for the cause. She continued to march and then attained martyrdom on February 21st, 1924. Martyr Balbir Kaur showed love, devotion, fearlessness to maintain the respect of her religious rights and freedom. She sacrificed her and her son's life for the greater good. Sikh women who participated in peaceful protest showed that a collective right is more important than our lives and personal interest. They stood up for their rights and sacrificed their homes, children's, spouses, sons, and their lives. During these 5 years of struggle, which was during 1920s to 1925, Sikh women fought shoulder to shoulder and equally contributed to the success of the Gurdwara reform movement, drawing inspirations from Mata Khivi, who established the Langar or the free kitchen system, and Mai Pago, a Sikh warrior who fought against Mughals. Women contributed to both aspects of women. Along with marching at the protest, they also contributed by cooking, distributing langar, serving food, water, and aiding to all the protesters who marched during these years. Practicing the Sikh
Looks like network problem.
It looks like there is some network problem with our colleague Jaspreet Kaur. She somehow got stuck in the proceedings. So meanwhile, the people are asking while she would be back about the questions. You can only write the question as we clarified in the beginning. Please write the question in the chat box and we'll pick up your questions from there. I'm also picking up some questions from the Facebook because it's being live broadcasted. So we'll be able to reflect about that once the presentations are finished.
Dr. Chima, why don't I suggest that as we wait to see if we are able to reconnect with Jaspreet, that you may want to both formally close and thank our presenters, and in the meantime, determine whether or not there is any other questions or other kinds of opportunity you'd like to open to answer some of the comments that we've had today.
Thank you very much, Pat. I have picked up one or two things which have been asked on the Facebook connection and for this August gathering to note. People are raising the issue of displacement of various people. A lot of protesters are being displaced. Over 60, 70 people have been missing, and people are of the view that they have been taken by the Indian security agencies. And obviously the very recent issue of a young labor leader, Navdeep Kaur, is being highlighted as well, because she has been molested by the Indian police, and that should be noted by the international community. I'm also approached by a couple of people that what United Nations is doing about this. I've clarified that on several occasions to various communities who ask what UN is doing. United Nations shouldn't be confused with the international armed forces. United Nations doesn't interfere in the matters of any member states unless it is, and obviously it's a serious violation of human rights, freedom of assembly and freedom of protest. Let me assure you that the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres not once, more than once, has endorsed farmers' right to protest and the right of peaceful assembly. So other colleagues, as well as United Nations Human Rights Office, has been doing this. Let me just have a quick, sorry for that, my throat was a bit dry, it's a bit cold in the United Kingdom. So United Nations have been endorsing this right of peaceful assembly and the human rights, as well as when it comes to the matter of people's being displaced or taken by the security agencies or being molested or sexually harassed. All that obviously is in the notice of UN, and UN is very closely monitoring this. I'm sending the briefs to United Nations Human Rights Council officials, as well as the Office of Prevention of Genocide and all the relevant offices. So we are trying our best to do that. As well as the co-chairs here, I would send Commissioner Mayenza all the letters written so far to the Indian ambassador by various congressmen, as well as some of the reports recently published on this issue. So we'll continue this endeavor to endorse the right of peaceful assembly and the protest. And we do hope that the Indian government, for the betterment of its own citizens, should take notice of it. Because the struggle of the minorities of freedom of religion in India is not only the Sikh struggle, it's the struggle of the Hindus, Dalits. It's only 2% of Brahmins who are trying to implement Hindutva agenda in India are misrepresenting the faith of Hinduism. So it's a matter of Dalits, it's a women's rights issue, it's an issue of Sikhs, it's an issue of Christians, it's also issue of the human rights defenders and the international organization like Amnesty International had to leave India. And I mentioned that in my report as well, that Indian government has issued a very controversial piece of legislation, Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, which has banned over 10,000 NGOs and third sector organizations in India in one go. And Amnesty International, Greenpeace have been barred from India to work there. United States Commission on International Religious Freedom itself and its staff has never been allowed to visit India, although they applied visa in various years and they have never been allowed. So these are some of the issues. I think Jaspreet got disconnected, so is Professor Kashmir Singh. Jaspreet, are you back? Would you like to continue before I just find out?
Yes. I think even Zoom couldn't take my comparison that women in US had to fight for 100 years for right to vote. I just got cut down at that time. So I would like to continue that. As I mentioned, it took 100 years, and 19th Amendment was introduced in US Congress when the right to vote was finally given, whereas Sikh women got the right to vote at the Gurdwara Committee. The date was established, which was in 1925. Since then, Sikh women have continued to raise their voice and protest against the atrocities. Dr. Shima mentioned of the poor in the current times. As the biggest protest in the human history is continuing, blessed and inspired by our ancestors, women continue to be a forefront of these protests and raise their voices against the unfair and brutal practices of the government. Along with accompanying their families to the protest, they have been independently even driving their own tractors to the rallies in Delhi. They have inspired women from the neighboring area so much that even they want to learn how to drive tractors and reach and are marching towards the protests and rallies at the same time. From a kid holding on their grandparents' hand to being the old grandparent marching and rolling chapatis at the protest, women continue to shine and grow in strength with each and every passing day. While we commemorate the 100 years of Nankana Sahib, my heart goes out to the brave Singhs and Kaurs who sacrificed their lives for the truth, justice, and liberty. And Sikhs, as everybody mentioned here, are continuing to do so. I would also like to close by quoting my inspiration, late Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She said, "Fight for the things that you care about, but do it in a way that would lead others to join you." Thank you.
Thank you, Jaspreet. And there could be no more fitting conclusion than your, at this point, than your remarks, which commemorate not only the important history as we look at recognition 100 years ago of the martyrdom of the nonviolent Sikh ancestors who were practicing their faith, but you identify, as all of our speakers have, the important reality that religious freedom is something that continues to require our not only monitoring but deep involvement in assuring that those who do not have the freedom to practice religion, or as Commissioner Mayenza said, choose not to. It's that freedom in and of itself, which is the focus and importance of today's presentation, and in recognition that this responsibility continues and will, but the attention paid to it on a seminar like today is an important part of carrying forth that mission. Let me thank our distinguished panel today for their presentations. Jaspreet Kaur, to be sure, Dr. Kashmir Singh. Dr. Singh, we regret that we weren't able to get the full context of your comments, but certainly we will endeavor to try to make whatever you would like to have expressed available in addition to the way that this is being broadcast on Facebook. Dr. Iqtidar Chima, thank you again for your thoughtful presentation and your continuing leadership in this, in the issue of Sikh religious freedom and justice. And most specifically, certainly our two strong leaders in Congress, Congressman Garamendi and Congressman Valadeo, and particular thanks to our keynote speaker. We are so grateful to have Commissioner Nadine Menza from USCIRF on the front lines, continuing her commitment to the issue of religious freedom worldwide. We want to thank the many members of the Sikh community around the world who will watch and participate in this event. We want to thank the organizers of the American Sikh Caucus who took the time to put together this event. And we look forward to the continuing collaboration and commitment to the cause of religious freedom around the world. Thank each and every one of you for being part of our program. And we look for continuing collaboration with you on the issues of religious freedom, particularly with respect to our Sikh brothers and sisters around the world. Good day.
Thank you very much. Edmund, you can now we have finished the meeting. And our role model is obviously Nadine. We always have a lot of aspiration and inspiration from her. So thank you all once more. And we will meet again. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And just as a closing statement, we want to again thank everyone who have participated. And one of the issues that have come up is the farmers' protest. And as Ms. Nadine has talked about, the issues that they're being looked at currently. And the Sikh caucus, as you know, that the chair of the American Sikh Congressional Caucus right away addressed this issue, writing a strong letter to the State Department as well as the Indian ambassador. So as to Nadine herself brought up the issue of their monitoring the situation, and we will also forward the names of the individuals who are being held under the Indian government, and of course, most important of Navdeep Kaur. So thank you all for participating. Thank you for all the individuals, and wishing you all well, and we'll see you at the next briefing. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Dr. Chima,
Yes.
actually, Dr. Pitwar wants to continue. If we can continue, and Nadine and other panelists can go, just to kind of
Yeah, I think
casual talk,
Nadine,
if we want to.
I think I thanked Nadine and she's already gone. So are the congressmen. So if we want to have a little chit chat of our own, you are welcome to continue for next couple of minutes. If I'm interrupted by my son, who would find his daddy somewhere in the house, so then I will still be with you. Yeah, carry on if you wish to.